Hi class, it's Miss Miller here, and today I wanted to share with you a little bit more about how optic works when you're approaching a visual. If you get a visual text, the visual is actually another form of a text, and as you can see, we use it as our sources for our work. And so we need to be able to analyze and really read through this text or visual in order to fully understand all of how the different sources work together. And so if we take a look at OPTIC, which is just a formula to address different visuals, and there are several different formulas out there that you can use, different approaches to address some of the components in a visual. OPTIC happens to be a very simple one. The O stands for overview. And so when you do an overview, and that just means that you're looking at a visual and you're just giving perhaps your overall impressions. You're looking at it and just saying in maybe one or two sentences an overview of what it is that you see. What do you see explicitly? What's literal for you? What stands out to you? And then you want to do P for parts. Then you want to start to take a look at the visual and you want to break it up into several different pieces. Maybe you take a look at just the text at the very top of the visual. You might take a look at one part of the image, maybe it's just a face. In some cases I like to cover the visual up with another piece of paper and just slowly go down the paper to just see what the different pieces look like all by themselves. And that's just a form of analysis when you can break something up. So breaking the text or the visual up into mini parts. So initially you might be looking at one big picture, but when you break it up into parts, you might have maybe 5 or 6 separate images now that you're focusing on to find out some of the details that you might have missed had you just done an overview. So first it's overview, then it's P for parts, then you have T for title. Now the visuals that you guys got in your Socratic seminar today, there were not necessarily any titles in the visuals. However, source A, they did have a specific title. So you want to look at that title to see if it kind of gives you any indication about which side of the argument this visual might fall under. Is it going to support your claim, or is it going to support your counterclaim? So you want to take a look at that and see. The title might also give you some help or hints. So not all the time, but it definitely gives you some guidance. And then you want to take a look at the I for interrelationships. And really that just means that you're going to take a look at the title, you're going to look at all the little parts, and then you're going to see if anything is connected, if you need one to be able to understand another. Are there any relationships? Are there pairs of pieces or titles that might really make sense? Does the title reinforce any particular image? Is there one piece of the image that really connects with another one? So any interrelationships that you see. And then C, after you've done all of this work and you've done the overview, you've broken it up into parts, you've addressed the title, you've looked at all the different interrelationships, you actually then go and draw a conclusion, and that's C for conclusion, and that should be again in 1 or 2 sentences. Now, today when you guys did the Socratic seminar and you looked over several visuals on the honor code and you looked at these political cartoons to see some of the sarcasm, that's the best way to express the sarcasm, but the political cartoons do that for you. And so in this case, you really essentially did OPTIC, and that's what I wanted to show you. So you really did OPTIC. A lot of the questions that I asked you really were guiding you towards OPTIC. So if you broke that visual down, that's all you have to do. In fact, OPTIC is probably an easier way to address it and approach it than all of the questions, a series of questions that I gave you for the Socratic seminar today. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through and practice one example of OPTIC so you can see what it looks like, because I believe that's the last part of your little work that you need to do for your project that we have due on Friday. Okay, let's take a look. So let's take a look at this visual here, or this political cartoon, and this is one of the many that we talked about in our Socratic seminar today. And I want to focus on the first letter of OPTIC, which is overview. So I'm just glancing at this image. I'm going to give you my overview of it overall. The first things that I notice, we have 2 characters or 2 individuals. It looks like a father and son, a child on a computer. And so by the setting with a computer and a lamp and the father's holding what looks like a newspaper. There's a picture on a wall. I'm going to assume that they're at their home or their residence. So there's just assumptions made, not necessarily factual. We're just trying to get closer to the meaning of the visual. And then I would say if the child is saying to his dad, I don't need to do my homework, I outsourced it to a kid in China, we do see the sarcasm there, but we also notice that there is more of a casual tone. It's perhaps a casual relationship between the two characters or individuals, the father and son in this case. So we're going to take a look at a separate visual, and technically when you do optic you stick with one visual, but in this case, just for the sake of addressing this topic, I'm going to select this visual because it has many parts. So the second part of optic would be parts, and so now what you're doing is moving away from looking at the visual as one picture, and you want to put it together into little pieces or parts. And so now when I look at this, I don't see one image, I see 3 or 4 separate images or 4 separate parts. My first part, actually I see 3 images or 3 parts, but my first part is a little boy and he's holding a report card with straight F's. So that's one part. The second part, I noticed that there's a little chain attached to his leg. That's part 2. So now I've broken this visual up into 2 segments, and I want to be able to focus on those in isolation. My third part would be this big ball with a message written on it entitled Atlanta Teacher Cheating Scandal. And so each of the parts work together to express an idea. And so our job when you do the optic is to identify them. So if we take a look back at part number 1, we might say, okay, why does this little guy have all F's? Now, obviously, it's attached to something, and some of you might notice there is technically a 4th part, or it could be considered a title. It says The Other Prisoner. So this gives me some idea of perhaps maybe where I should start in terms of addressing the parts. I'm going to start with the actual ball. The huge ball, Atlanta Teacher Cheating Scandal, clearly is something bigger than anything, and it's weighing everyone down, specifically this other student. And so a part all by itself, there's some sort of scandal with cheating, so there's accountability not only on the teacher's end, but on the student, or not only on the student's end, but as well for the teacher. So in this instance, this teacher, whoever it is in Atlanta, must have done something, and we need to know perhaps a little bit more background. There's lots of research that might tell us about what specifically happened or the details of it, but whatever it is, this person cheated. And so the other person who's suffering in this is tied to this would be this student, and not necessarily this particular student, but all students, and perhaps he's symbolic of everybody at this school in Atlanta. So he's the other prisoner, he's the other one. So obviously this woman or man, whoever this Atlanta teacher is in jail for whatever they did. They did something that cheating scandal. It was huge that they're somehow a prisoner. That's what the title might imply. And the other prisoner would be this child. And I don't, clearly it's not literally he's a prisoner, but he's suffering as well. And his suffering comes in the form of straight F's as in failing in reading and math and writing. And so this affects everybody. And so this image may connect to our idea of the honor code because it's perhaps showing some sarcasm in the sense that if we expect our children, our students to have this high standard of behavior, then the expectation or the idea is that the adults in the school would be able to do that too. And so this is sort of mocking this idea of the honor code. Okay, so there we are. We broke it into parts. Now we're looking at the T for title in optic. And if we take a look at the title for source A in our own work, we see recent research has shown that a spy cam can greatly improve the honor code. And this is the title of this work. Again, this is a different cartoon. And so we see, we have to ask ourselves it's almost like doing a double take. Is this some sort of a joke? Because how can, if you have to use a spy cam to improve the honor code, then it's not really, you're violating it to improve it. So it's kind of ironic in a sense. So this title might give us insight in terms of what this visual is about. It could give us some input about it and help us to form our opinion. Let's take a look at the eye and optic for interrelationships. And what it does is it takes all the different pieces or parts and even the title and makes connections between the two to help us understand what the visual is trying to express. So if we take a look at this image, we see several different parts. We see the text on the board, cheaters never prosper, which we know blatantly is mocking because this cheater clearly did, right? Tom Brady, here he is holding his many awards. He's got 3 on the floor, 1 in his hand. He can't even keep up with everything. He's been given the MVP title on several occasions, but yet the message here says cheaters never prosper. And so here it is that we're trying to tell our students, you know, don't cheat, you won't amount to anything. But here this other message is saying, well, if you do cheat, maybe you'll win. So, or not only win, but you'll get all of these accolades. So there's a double standard here, a message that's being shared, and so it's mocking this idea of the honor code. Okay, so you take all those parts, you connect them together to help give some sort of meaning or get us closer to the meaning of the text. The last part of this would be the conclusion. And so once you've had a chance to do all of the overview and the parts and the title, and you've examined the interrelationships, then you can perhaps go ahead now and draw your own conclusion. And this should be in about 1 or 2 sentences. So this honor system here, in this case, there's no accountability, and we have to completely rely on the students to decide whether or not they're going to do what they need to do. Please study, please learn, and if you like it, test yourselves. Your grade is a B+. So we don't know how many kids are actually going to go to that extent.